Welcome to the video on Section C, Part 2, Assessment Design. My name is Alexis Alexander, and I'll be your co-pilot for this important section of the OEI Course Design rubric. By the end of this video, you'll be able to design and create effective and valid assessment in your online course. In this video, I'll be providing you with some examples of assessment design best practices and some practical ideas on how to meet the standards in this section of the rubric. At the end of the video, there are some resources to help you with ideas and more information about online assessment in general. Let's start by taking a look at the rubric. Assessment activities have face validity. That is, they appear to match the curriculum and are explained using appropriate reading level and vocabulary. So first of all, what is face validity exactly? I admit that I got this definition from Wikipedia, but I think it's pretty clear. I'm not going to read the whole definition, but I think this covers the main point. In other words, a test can be said to have face validity if it looks like it is going to measure what it is supposed to measure. So you might say that this is the most basic determination of assessment validity. Validity is usually considered a matter of degree, not all or none. We live in a complex world where all sorts of factors come into play when you are mixing human beings, students, and test questions. But let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. So, as the subject matter expert in your field, you're probably the best judge of whether the assessment activities in your course have face validity. If you work in a discipline where most of the testing is fact-based, for example, involving memorization of facts rather than higher order thinking, you may have collaborated with colleagues in your area to come up with valid testing instruments. This area becomes a bit trickier if you tend to use a lot of publisher test banks in your online course, which takes you one remove from assessment design, since you are accepting testing items that you can only assume have face as well as other types of validity. So make sure that you investigate your publisher standards. It should be easy to find out how they have tested their materials to prove validity. If this information is hard to find or non-existent, you probably will want to find a different source for your pre-made test banks. Another way of testing face validity is your own experience of giving your test. Some LMS, learning management systems, provide ways to correlate test questions to student learning outcomes or other types of standards. In fact, in some types of LMS, you can perform pretty sophisticated data review if you are unsure about test question validity. But that is probably farther than you want to go unless you are doing research or are fascinated with statistics. Okay, on to the second point in the rubric. Higher order thinking is required. That is, analysis, problem solving, etc. So what exactly is higher order thinking in the context of an educational setting? Most of us have seen or used Bloom's taxonomy. Depending on when you started out teaching, you may have seen different versions of this tool. The taxonomy underwent some changes in the 90s to this version. Sometimes higher order thinking is referred to by the acronym HOT, and there are about as many visual representations of this idea as there are grains of sand on the beach. The bottom line here is that even if your subject area requires a lot of memorization of facts, it's important to also include other types of assessment. For example, you may use quizzes or other types of testing to test fact recall, which covers the first level in the taxonomy, but how will you assess higher order thinking also? Your assessment needs to include ways for students to interpret, apply, analyze, and evaluate what they are learning in your course. Using existing resources that visually represent Bloom's taxonomy can help you to map your outcomes to ideas for designing assessment. So this is an area in which it's relatively easy for you to do some basic research and find examples and ideas. I'll include more resources at the end of this video. Okay, on to the next point in the rubric. Assessments are designed to mimic authentic environments to facilitate transfer. Consider the kinds of skills a student would need to succeed in the real world or the workplace in using the knowledge they are meant to gain in your course. If, on the other hand, your course is part of a transfer pattern, make sure that students are assessed in the areas of knowledge that they will need to have in order to succeed in the subsequent courses. Assessment activities occur frequently throughout the duration of the course, and the instructor provides meaningful feedback in a timely manner. This point is pretty self-explanatory. One of your major jobs when teaching online is providing timely and effective feedback. Meaningful feedback is also self-explanatory, but I want to mention here that feedback online can be delivered in a variety of ways, via written comments, audio files, and video files. Providing that accessibility standards are met, these are all useful ways to provide feedback. Also, keep in mind when delivering written feedback that your comments, when delivered without you actually being present, are open to interpretation. So be sure to keep your comments direct and avoid attempts at sarcasm or even humor sometimes, since students may misunderstand your intention. Keep it clear and simple. Here are 5 basic tips of providing feedback. 1. Be as specific as possible. In a review of the available research titled The Power of Feedback, University of Auckland professors Helen Timperley and John Hattie highlight the importance of supplying learners with specific information about what they are doing right or wrong. For example, feedback like, "Great job," doesn't tell the learner what he did right, and likewise, a statement such as, "Not quite there yet," doesn't give her any insight into what she did wrong and how she can do better the next time around. Number 2, the sooner the better. Numerous studies indicate that feedback is most effective when it is given immediately rather than a few days, weeks, or months down the line. Number 3, address the learner's advancement toward a goal. Timberley and Hattie note that effective feedback is most often orientated around a specific achievement that students are or should be working toward. When giving feedback, it should be clear to students how the information they are receiving will help them progress toward their final goal. 4, present feedback carefully. The way feedback is presented can have an impact on how it is received, which means that sometimes even the most well-meaning feedback can come across the wrong way and reduce a learner's motivation. Number 5, involve learners in the process. The importance of involving learners in the process of collecting and analyzing performance-based data cannot be understated. Pennebaker says, students must be given access to information about their performance. At the broadest level, students need to know if they actually have mastered the material or not. Giving them information about the ways they are studying, reading, searching for information, or answering questions can be invaluable. Multiple types of assessment are used: research project, objective test, discussions, etc. Once again, in an attempt to spark higher order thinking in students, make sure to mix it up in the assessment design area. If your assessment is all multiple choice tests, for example, that means you need to add some variety. At least one collaborative project is also a great way to help students gain not only higher order thinking skills, but also 21st century workplace skills. Group or collaborative projects can be designed in many different ways. This may be something you need to experiment with to develop an approach that works best for your discipline and students. More resources for finding ideas about student-centered assessment will be provided at the end of this video. Opportunities for student self-assessment are plentiful and provide feedback that allows students to seek additional help when necessary. So, how will students know in your course that they are doing well or that they need more help or support. Getting back to students in a timely manner helps them with this, particularly in short-term classes. If students don't receive feedback on projects or papers quickly enough, they have no way of knowing what they need to do to improve. Students should know what to expect in this area after they read the syllabus or the orientation or welcome information in your class. Providing a consistent online office hour where students can drop in or make appointments can also be of help to students in this area. When it comes right down to it, though, your individual feedback to students is the key in this area. Detailed feedback on problem areas in assignments, delivered along with resources for students to use to get more help as needed, will address this issue. If you have online student tutoring already set up on your campus, be sure that information about that is easily available to students in your orientation materials and also as a part of your feedback when needed. If you don't already have resources for student tutoring, that is something you would want to address at your campus.